In one of the most shocking finals Germany and the world has ever seen in the game of the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, this one really takes the top spot for one of the most absurd moments in time. Dinh-Kha takes the championship with Labyrinth, beating Kashtira in the finals, but there are a lot of problems to be seen all over this game. Let's talk about it. But first, if you want to support me and the channel, use my affiliate links in the description below, and you can also become a YouTube member to get early access to deck lists, exclusive Discord access, and much more. So let's recap the German nationals and specifically the finals and the last moments of Game 3, which I think shocked a lot of players and just showed that everything that the player base has already said is true. Before we begin, leave a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new as always, and the thing I want to talk about first is, of course, Kashtira. Kashtira remains the strongest deck, the most represented deck. It doesn't end up taking the finals, but it does have 32% representation of the top cut, which was 32, so that's about 10-11 people. Kashtira remains relatively strong. It was honestly pretty unharmed in terms of its engine. It did get hit, lowering the consistency with the Rise Heart, Unicorn to 2, but the cards that Kashtira still plays, Dimension Shifter, Kashtira Birth, I think the Field Spell also being just an OTK, we saw this in this matchup in Game 2, is incredibly strong. And we saw in the OCG that the deck got hit significantly, but in the TCG, those powerful cards actually remained at 3, and the deck went relatively unharmed, where its engine can do the same toxic things that it could before. Kashtira has an extremely strong engine because of its ability to summon so many strong monsters to the field, and of course, kind of floodgate your opponent, to be honest, keeping them out of their graveyard. So I think this just showed that Kashtira remains a very strong deck. In terms of what happens next with the deck, we're going to have to see in Euros and North American Championship if anything changes, but the ban list just dropped weeks ago. We're not going to get a new list, and probably this is the format as it stays. The first place, actually, in this tournament was Labyrinth. It didn't have a lot of representation in the top cut. I think it was around 12%, but it did end up taking the final, and we saw some insane moments at the end where Dinh-Kha rips his opponent's entire hand with Deck Devastation Virus to win the game just on its own. I think we all know that Labyrinth is a very powerful deck. I think because of sort of like its hiatus from the top cuts recently, people might have stopped respecting the deck altogether, didn't really respect it in the side deck, got punished, and this is how Labyrinth wins. This is the same thing with Branded, where, when Branded becomes strong, people just side deck for it, and it's really easy to counter. And then, we're seeing Dinh-Kha with Labyrinth being really explosive, but also winning through Gozen Match and Deck Devastation Virus. Not to bash Dinh-Kha, because, for example, what we're seeing here on the screen is just like a very skillful board-breaking strategy from a trap deck going second. But still, Labyrinth with Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle need to get hit. That card is unreasonable. And of course, the Floodgates, nobody wants those, but I think Konami has a different perspective on what to do with cards like that. We also have at second place representation for Top Cut. We actually have Runic / Live Twin / Sprite deck. Pretty much expected. I think now that we're not playing against Super Heavy Samurai, those decks can come back. I think Runic specifically, a deck that can't really play a lot of hand traps, finds it really hard to play against Super Heavy, while now with Runic it has a lot of board breaking ability, and it can actually perform in this meta. The Runic decks are incredibly powerful because they just have so much power, so much draw power, and we saw Live Twin variants, we saw Sprite variants, we saw the For Hire variants doing really well throughout this tournament. We saw them a lot in feature matches, and I think overall, those feel like relatively fair decks to play against. They do not rely on floodgates. They do sometimes deck you out, which is unfortunate and really sucks to play against. But still, those feel a lot more fair than the things that we saw in the finals, which is basically not allowing your opponent to play the game. And lastly, we have Rika Sanavalon and Branded taking the other two named spot with 2 decks each in the top cut. We also have other decks in the top cut named as other, so we're not really sure what they are. We actually saw Kashtira Speedroid, which was a very, very interesting strategy. I think did make it into the top cut. Maybe it's still listed under Kashtira though, but Branded, just in relatively short, it's still a very strong deck, really not impacted by any ban list recently. Doesn't really need Puppet to win, and we saw that in many topping deck lists recently in France, and probably in this one we'll have to find out the person who actually topped and get a deck list, both of them actually. But overall, the deck is still really, really strong, can perform well against certain matchups in this format, and it's now really a surprise to see 1 or 2 of these in the top cut. And then Rika Sanavalon, actually a really annoying deck to play against because it's still, even though it exists for so long, people still don't know what it does, how to play against it, and if you let it go uninterrupted, it basically creates an unbreakable board. It does have trouble going first, does have problems with removal, but if a skilled pilot takes this deck to a tournament, they can do really, really well against the right matchups. I think Rika overall is a deck that doesn't really need to get hit, even though Sunseed Genius Loci is full combo, and it's kind of insane what the deck can do. But the Rika engine, the Sanavalon engine, they're pretty much, interruptions, similar end board to Branded, but with a little bit more back row support, just removal, tributing, banishing, bouncing back, and they do actually play the Cactus Bouncer, some of them. I don't actually know if the topping list did, but that sort of kind of locks both players from special summoning monsters if you control a plant monster, which is of course toxic, but we've seen that all around. So in case you haven't seen this Eradicator play, I think I said Deck Devastation Virus, but I did mean Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Here on stream, just Dinh-Kha Boy starting the game, setting 5, passing, fires off the Eradicator. Tom chains Cosmic Cyclone because it's probably the only chainable spell in his hand, and then it resolves. Lady is also gonna pop a card in the hand and the field, and then he shows the hand where we see 4 spells, and the last card gets popped by the Lady. Yeah, and he's left with no cards in hand, passes the turn back to Dinh-Kha, who normal summons Ariana, and basically it's handshakes from there. Kind of incredible finals. I think this shows a huge problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not the first time we've seen this. We are basically going from one unfair format to the other. We're just seeing, going from Mystic Mine. Actually, bring back It Kalos to 1, to be honest. Bring back Tier Elements. We need Tier Elements to actually save this format, and hopefully something could happen. Congratulations to the winners and the topping list. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. Comment down below. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.